Hi everyone, I'm Emma from Kitronik.
Hello, I'm Dominic Morrow from Smoke Mirrors.
And we are going to have a little chat with you today about clear acrylic. This is part of a new sort of
Tech talk.
Tech talk that we're doing, where me and Dominic are gonna go through materials and materials properties. And Dominic is, he specialises in laser cutters and such. So we should be covered here if anyone has any questions.
So we're going to make these tech talks around the materials available from Kitronik, with a special emphasis on laserables. But as time goes on, we might look at other materials available from Kitronik and other techniques. Other than laser cutting, if there are any such techniques other than laser cutting, I don't think there are. But today's focus is going to be particularly on clear acrylic.
Yes.
So, what is acrylic?
Acrylic.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Emma.
It's a material, isn't it?
It is it's a material. When we're talking about acrylic, in this context, we're talking about flat sheets of acrylic. Specifically, other names for acrylic include the trade name Perspex, and we at Kitronik sell the branded Perspex. It has been known as plexiglass in the past. Way back when, I think they used to make cockpits on aeroplanes out of plexiglass, which is basically acrylic. Acrylic is a polymer plastic. It's like chemical name, which I'm not going to go into the real chemical name because I will mangle it, but it's called PMMA, and its main properties are that it's very strong for a plastic, and it's also what we call elastic, so it can be shaped and bent into all kinds of different shapes, and it's also thermoplastic, which means it can be heated up, and when it gets hot it goes soft, and then when it cools down again, it goes back to being the same old plastic. And you're going to talk about that a bit later. I'm going to make you talk about when you made some some visors.
Yes, that was fun.
And one of the main properties for acrylic, although we sell a range of acrylics, is its ability to be transparent.
Yes. Comes in handy for making particular things, which we will talk about.
So Emma, I wonder if you could talk me through the range of acrylics that are available at Kitronik. You might need to have a look at the website here to help you with that.
Absolutely. Let's have a look-see. So here is the Kitronik website. We have a handy-dandy little set of filters down the side here, just in case you're looking for anything specific. So this is where you'd usually find it. So go into materials, Perspex and acrylic sheets, and then if you want to look for specifically clear or transparent sheets, this is where you'd find
I noticed
them.
there's a number of ways we can find the clear sheets from that drop-down menu, isn't there?
Yeah.
So obviously we've got more. We've got value range.
Yeah. Value range is that's sort of a
cheaper sheet.
It's
and then so let's have a look at the clear range.
So you go into clear and mirrored acrylic sheets. We have obviously some mirrored stuff here. You know, we'll probably go into mirrored.
We'll do a whole episode.
A whole episode. Nice.
Episode on that. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll differentiate between cast and extruded.
I have something to say about the difference in a bit, because I wasn't sure. I had to look it up, and I think it's worth mentioning the difference between cast, acrylic, and extruded. Because out in the world of forums and help places, you'll get some sort of wizened laser veteran saying, "Oh, you should always use one over the other. Your problem's probably because you used extruded and not cast acrylic." There's a snobbery out there, and we need to unpack that a little bit, I think.
Yeah. It took me a while to sort of realise the difference when I first started making.
So, in terms of thicknesses, what have we
So in
got
terms
available?
of thicknesses, we have 3mm, which is usually what
that's
I'm
the most
using.
common, isn't it?
Most common, yeah.
Yeah, and that's certainly from a laserables point of view, 3mm is what I encounter most often.
So we have some here in 2mm, some in 4mm. So on either side of that 3mm, just in case you're making something really specific. And we also go up to 5mm as well, which is what I'll use for something like edge lighting, which we will talk about later as well.
Yeah, clear acrylic's great for edge lighting. I actually think it's one of the coolest kind of makery things you can do with clear acrylic.
Yes, absolutely.
Something else to be said about acrylics in general, not just clear, is that people often think, oh, well, I've only got a smaller laser cutter, for example. So someone might have a hobby-sized laser or a laser diode cutter, or one of those very small blue and white laser cutters you can see on eBay. Of course, we don't do sheets here at Kitronik that are as small as A5. But with a Stanley knife or a scribing tool, it's very easy to score acrylic, get it over the edge of a table and break it. If you score it several times on both sides, you can get a bigger sheet to a small sheet pretty easily without it splintering. You have to score it fairly deeply for it to break along that line. But I think we have on our YouTube channel a video of me doing that way back in maybe 2015 or something like that.
Whoa. What's that, like 7 years?
Well, I don't even want to think about how long ago it was I made that. And in that same video, I drill the acrylic and I use a tap to put a screw thread into it. Because you can put a screw thread into acrylic and use it with a machine screw, or you can use self-tapping screws that will create a tapped thread in the acrylic.
That's usually what I use.
Yeah, you have to drill a pilot hole first, otherwise it'll shatter.
Yeah. Definitely made that mistake before. In terms of sizes, you were just talking about sizes. So that leads us on nicely to the sort of sizes that we do.
I've got a piece here. We can show it. We can move it around. I would call this like OG Perspex clear sheet. So this is a piece of 3mm clear acrylic in 600 by 400, which is roughly A2 size. So this will fit in most school laser cutters, unless you have a small desktop sized machine. I'll try and show that it is thin.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people ask questions about the film on acrylic, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the
go for it.
This stuff. So depending on the make of the plastic that you're buying, and I think most of the ones from Kitronik have a plastic film on.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes you will see a sort of it's like a sticky paper.
Yeah, that's usually the back of Mirrored. I see that on more.
Yeah, from us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people often ask, well, should they take the plastic wrapping off before laser cutting? And the answer is if you're doing laser cutting, there's really no need to take the plastic off. It can act as a good protection, stop especially the clear acrylic from becoming very dusty and dirty or getting staining on it from the laser cutting process. I'm trying to peel this plastic off and it's not going great. There we go.
There you go.
And you can see it really is clear acrylic. So there you go. I wonder if I can show the edge of that on the other camera, Emma.
Oh, yeah.
Let's try it.
Yeah, let's try it. This one? Or the demonstration camera?
Oh, the demo one, yeah, not the microscope.
There we go. Oh, we have some issues with flickering there, but
and focus.
And focus.
And lighting.
But
this show will get better as time goes on, won't it?
Yeah.
I mean, not for clear acrylic. Clear acrylic's had it as an episode, as we're doing it right now. But, by the time we get to Mirrored, we'll have worked this out. So you can see that it's.
There we go. Oh, it tried.
Almost as. It's certainly I mean, I don't know about on a scientific level, on a sort of a physics level, but it has very, very similar properties to normal window glass.
Yeah, yeah.
So much so that recently, when I was reglazing my greenhouse, for some awkward shaped pieces that went around the door, rather than buying glass glazing from the glazier, I laser cut some of the acrylic that we have that's in the economy range. I forget what we call that. And it looks great. I mean, you can't tell it from the glass.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's indistinguishable from a distance, at least. If you tap it, you'll know. But
if you tap it, you'll know.
Yeah, yeah.
If you smash it with a hammer, you'll know.
Yeah.
Which brings me on to one of the materials we have at Kitronik is, and I think it's a Perspex.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Material, and this is known as glass clear.
Glass
acrylic.
like clear.
And as you can see, it really does look like a piece of glass, like a piece of cut glazing. And that's been laser cut. We don't sell it in this pizza wedge shape.
Yeah.
But as you can just, it should be very clear that there's a green tint to the edge. And that, I love that look.
Yeah. It's very realistic of actual glass. All glass does tend to have that green tint, so it's nice for doing something like I've made a miniature greenhouse. As you know, Dominic's just said he used it for
a real greenhouse.
A real greenhouse. I made a tiny one.
Well, to be clear, Emma, I didn't use the glass clear for my greenhouse because it is a little bit more money. But if I was trying to be fancy, I would have.
Yes.
I wonder if it's worth on this piece just trying to use the microscope to show the edge.
I think so.
That's my arm.
There you go.
Oh, that worked very well just for a second. Okay, there we go. So, what do you notice about that, Emma? How would you describe that?
Ridged.
Ridged. Very good. So let's get rid of that camera because it's awful. But that ridging pattern there, that is a direct cause of it being cut by a laser cutter.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So the way that the laser beam works as it's cutting is it turns on and off rapidly. And so essentially, rather than it being like a sword blade that slices through, it's more like a drill that drills repeatedly through, and that's why you get this line marking.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes one of the tips that people ask about for cutting acrylics is how can you avoid that lining, and really if you're using a laser cutter you can't. But the slower you go and the more power you use on the laser cutter, the more polished an edge you're going to get.
Right.
But you're going to get a wider kerf, and by kerf I mean the width between. So if we imagine we're running the laser across this piece of almost invisible material on the camera, the kerf is going to be the amount of material that's lost between the piece that you want to keep and the piece that's going to get chucked away.
Yeah.
So yeah, to reduce that ridging, it's more power, less speed. Yes. And if your laser cutter has an air assistance, which is where air is blown directly onto the workpiece to keep the workpiece cool and to get rid of all of the particulate and the smoke debris, and it also sort of cools the cut and keeps the lens clean. If you reduce the air assistance, and you'll see lots of videos on YouTube about this, you can also get probably a slightly better cut or a more polished cut on your Perspex, but at the risk of more risk of fire.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Is it because it's melting the edge slightly?
It does melt the edge slightly, as I understand it, but that's more a case of the lingering of the beam. Right. The way that the laser beam is cutting through the material, it's it's vaporizing it. It's turning it into a gas.
Okay.
Like
Awesome.
it was a solid and now it's a gas, you know. And well, that actually brings me on to one of the downsides of laser cutting acrylics, and that is it is a little bit smelly.
A little bit, yeah.
I personally do not like the smell.
I do. That's where we differ. I've spent so much time around it.
Well, I would encourage you not to inhale too much of it.
Don't sniff.
So if you are looking to laser cut acrylic on the quite regularly, it is something that you'll need to think about, especially in terms of a school environment or somewhere where you're extracting the fumes from your laser cutter outside to somewhere that the neighbours can sniff it, or there might be kids playing in the playground or whatever it might be. It's not toxic, but it is an unpleasant smell.
Yeah.
So the sort of filtration you'd be looking for specifically to remove that odour would be a carbon filter.
Yes, yeah.
Take the smell out. The carbon will capture the odour and hopefully stop your neighbours getting too annoyed at the smell of the laser cutting.
Ah, cool. We have
people actually watching.
Yeah. Why does air off give a better cut? Says Laura Matthews.
Well, that's a great question, and I do not know. I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah.
So thanks for that question. Maybe we'll research it, and if we're talking about Perspex, opaque Perspexes and mirror Perspexes and acrylics in the future, I might be able to find out. I really don't know why. I don't know what the theory is behind it, but this seems to be a sort of received wisdom. I mean, I would suggest it's something to experiment with, but if you're not, you should always be watching your laser as it works anyway. Keeping an eye on it. A laser cutter always has a risk of having a flame or even catching fire. It's the nature of the way the machinery works. So make sure that you're specifically watching it like a hawk, and if you have the sort of air assistance where you have a throttle that you can throttle the air and reduce that airflow, you should see a cleaner cut. But as to why, it would be great if I knew why, and I do not know why. If you know why, maybe put it in the comments in this live stream, and we can read them out and tell people why that is.
I shall be researching afterwards.
Yeah,
we shall. Help us now, but
one thing that I'm not very familiar with, Emma, but I think you are, is gluing acrylic.
Oh yes, I've done that many times. My preference for gluing acrylics is Tensol.
How do you spell it? Tensol?
Yes, precisely.
And we don't sell that at Kitronik, do we?
No. It's one of those serious business sort of glues where you have to apply it with a syringe, and it's not as melty. I'll go through some of the other glues that I've used in a bit, but as far as affecting the acrylic around where you're trying to glue, it doesn't affect it quite as much.
Because sometimes I think I've used super glue before, and the nature of super glue is you open it up and then it starts to frost everything from the chemicals that come off it. Yeah,
it gives a really nice sturdy hold, and if it's internal to like something that's not see-through, it's fine. But for clear acrylic, like we're talking about today, Tensol is probably your best bet.
Right, Tensol.
Yeah.
And that's the glue that people generally recommend, isn't it, for acrylics?
Yeah.
I have seen. I have some customers who work in the museums industry.
Yes.
And one chap who makes museum things to hold coins and to specially shaped display cases was gluing all his acrylic using formaldehyde that he got from a big formaldehyde jar where they were pickling dead animals. And I think they'd had it in the museum since, I don't know, the 1920s or something. So I don't think that's an easy thing to get hold of, but it did a very, very good job of melting the plastic just on the edge and connecting one piece of acrylic to another. What other glues have you tried?
So actually, in terms of stuff that contains formaldehyde, I have used a contact adhesive before. There is clear contact adhesive out there. I just got some, so I'll let you know how that goes next time we talk about it.
We could probably do a live stream on.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
That would be fun actually, because I've not really done any, and I think people would like to see a demo of that. So if that's something you're interested in, then do say so in the comments.
Yes.
Okay, what else have we got here? Edge lighting. Should we talk about edge lighting?
This is one of my favourite.
An example here. I don't know how we're going to show it though. Shall I try lifting
just
it
hold it up to the camera?
There we go.
Your pencil.
That looks nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Covers my face. I like it.
Yeah, improvement.
Thank you.
Sorry. So this is a piece I made. It features a couple different layers of engraving, and then a kiss cut, which is some of the way through, but not all the way through.
Can you explain a kiss cut to me?
Yes, very badly, but yes.
Which one's the kiss cuts on this?
So the kiss cutting is around the edge of the engraving, and then on the inside of the moon. So kiss cutting, I usually will do it on about half of the power and a fair amount faster than cutting all the way through. It cuts some of the way through, and it means that when the light goes, the edge is lit, then it captures it captures that light, I suppose.
Yeah, I can see that it's it might not be very clear on the camera, and I don't know if even taking it closer will make it so. But you've kiss cut some of the craters and the shapes on the moon there, and they're really catching the light from the edge lit. And just to explain what we mean by edge lit, is what we have here is this is a module available from Kitronik, and it would have been, if we'd had that queued up ready to go, that would have been clever, wouldn't it? Maybe you can find that while I'm talking about it.
Absolutely.
But what it is a line of, are they zip LEDs or just surface mount LEDs?
I think they're zip.
They're what we call zip LEDs, and they're mounted onto a circuit board. And there's some programming on here that is just it's cycling through. It's not easy to see on the camera at home because of the nature of LEDs, but it's cycling through RGB color sequence, and it is a little easier to see those color changes in the clear acrylic when we've got it, and we've got it mounted up in a sort of a pastel acrylic base here, and then it's powered from a USB. And we have different shaped. Is that backwards?
That's backwards, I think.
It's the right way around for me. That's where it matters. I think if we do it that way around, and we see we have an on-air sign, and then the edge lighting module, there is a way to change the well, okay, that's now doing a fast pattern, and
it's on.
That's a single color.
No, that's shifts, and then you press it to hold on a colour.
Oh, okay. So if we wanted to have a on-air sign in red, I'd press there, and as we can see, it's in red. There's a lot of lighting in this room. You wouldn't believe it from how we look on screen, but
there's a lot.
It would take me a good 5 minutes to turn all the lights off for you to see this better. But edge-lit acrylic, I think, is one of the niftier, for want of a more trendy word, ways of using clear acrylic in a maker project. And you could potentially, with an edge lighting module like this from anywhere along the item, or even from both ends, and make some really very interesting signage. Do you know? Have you ever seen? There's a project, and I don't have a link up ready to talk about it, but a Nixie Clock. So there's Nixie tubes of these sort of very old-fashioned tech light-up digital numbers that essentially have an element inside them, and then they light up the elements of a digit, like in some depth. But I've seen that where the acrylic or Perspex clear acrylic was stacked up, and then using something like microbit or Raspberry Pi, it was programmed to light a different layer.
Ooh.
Yeah, Would have been great to have that as a link ready to go, wouldn't it? Next time.
Boy, yeah, that looks like something I might have a go at trying to make. That sounds really fun.
Okay. Well, I wonder what else we have to say. Let me just check my notes here. I did just want to talk about engraving.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So it's worth noting that we've been talking about laser cutting acrylic, and we've been talking about those kiss cuts or linear engraves, as I sometimes call them, where we're using the laser cutter. If we imagine this is the bed of the laser and my pencil is the laser beam, where we're cutting out the acrylic and go all the way through it and creating an object. The other obvious thing you're going to do with a laser cutter or engraver is engrave on the surface of it. And when you do that, obviously what happens is we get this disruption on the surface, this crazing or frosting, which is in addition to the linear markings, the kiss cuts on this particular piece, is giving us the lettering, the shading. Now, I did mention earlier, and I'm not sure where I've put, here it is, if you're engraving onto acrylic, then it is probably best to remove the plastic wrapper.
Yes.
Otherwise, it gets all melted into your engraving, and it obviously it makes a mess of it and affects it. But of course, because that material is being vaporized into a dust, it will settle onto the acrylic.
Exactly.
Any tips on cleaning it?
Oh, yeah. So a lot of the time I use isopropyl, although technically you really shouldn't be using isopropyl, because what I have found is that if it's a particularly difficult piece of acrylic, which some pieces of acrylic just are difficult, like there's always going to be differences in batches and stuff like that, but I found that sometimes you can get micro cracking along the edge, which sort of looks like little J shapes.
When you've used the isopropyl alcohol?
Yes. Yeah.
I have had good results on cleaning acrylic with Swarfiga orange.
Oh, okay.
The hand stuff.
Yeah.
With the gritty bits in it. Yeah.
Nice.
And I think you could just use soap as well. It's the other alternative.
Yeah.
Maybe like dish
window,
soap. Yeah.
Window cleaner. Like that as well.
I like window cleaner, like a sort of a Windex style. Yeah. Essentially, even just a damp rag will do it.
We've got an answer in the comments there. Guru-san. It says, for air assist, I've not found a proper research done on this, but the two common theories are to remove the hot air around the material and most likely to extract the gas that is not transparent to the laser, hence heating the gas and not obstructing the beam.
I would have to read that through a few times to understand exactly what it's driving at, but thank you, Paul, for that, because I know who that is. Yes, that does make some sense. But results will vary. I mean, it's one of those things that you can experiment with. There is also quite a lot of speculation online, and particularly on YouTube, about cutting out of focus. So when you're setting the laser head up, normally you're setting the lens to be at focal height above the material. Yeah. And then depending on the focal length of the lens, the throw of the laser beam and where it's doing the most work is either going to hit on the surface of the material, which is ideal for engraving, or within the material, which could be better for cutting. There's also several videos online about cutting acrylics, and particularly clear acrylics, on wet paper tissue. And maybe we'll give that a go and have a talk about that one day.
Yeah, maybe we'll do some experimentation.
Oh, we do have a little video.
Different guru.
It was a different guru. Well, sorry. So many gurus, so few answers. Could we bring up the video that I shot of doing some acrylic cutting on a laser cutter? Because I'd just like to talk about flashback.
There we go.
So, as you can see here, I'm not sure if this is the one I did slow-mo or just the one I cut slowly. But so this is laser cutting. It's not a very powerful laser cutter. It's about 35, 40 watts. CO2, water cooled, and I'm hoping this is just going to repeat when it finishes. or you can press play again. That's the best way to get it to repeat on its own, I
I
suppose.
did make it loop, so
Awesome.
There
So
you
there it
go.
goes.
Yeah.
So you see that quite distinct flashing as it goes. Flash, there's another one. That quite bright white light. So that is the laser beam going through the material, and then you can see just behind the material that honeycomb lattice, which is a steel honeycomb. And as the laser beam touches the metal parts of that, the energy is reflected back up onto the material. And so if we had the plastic wrapping, well, you can't see me, so there's no point lifting that up. If you had the plastic wrapping off, at this point you're going to potentially get a little flash mark onto the back of your acrylic piece.
Yeah.
So often a way to combat this is lots of laser cutters, and this one is also true of that, come with a knife type bed. So that's slats rather than a honeycomb lattice that will hold the material but have fewer points of contact between the material and the bed. Or you can raise the material up off the bed, and I've seen this done using little acrylic kind of pins that will fit into the honeycomb bed and lift the entire thing up. And of course the advantage of that is if your laser goes through your acrylic and touches some more acrylic, it's just going to go through that acrylic as well and not flash back onto the material.
Ah, okay.
The other issue that can occur with laser cutting acrylics is, as you can see, as that laser beam goes through the acrylic there, the vaporized material is being pushed down and under the material. And so what can happen is you may get a pocket of that uncombusted vapor, that combustible gas existing in one of these honeycomb holes, and as the laser perhaps passes over it again, it could combust, i.e. explode. Explode sounds very dramatic, but I just mean there'll be a little pop of gas. And I have known that to move materials.
Right.
Yeah, which is very annoying if you're laser cutting, because then you've lost the kind of the path of what you're doing on the cutter.
Yeah. No, I found that sometimes because I always work on the knives, the slats that you mentioned.
Right. Yes.
And I found that does happen sometimes with, like, if you don't cut things in the right order. Sometimes I end up with a very strange sort of diagonal, like, crater mark instead of an actual cut, because it's disappeared into the slat.
Right. One interesting thing. So here at Kitronik we have, I think, 4 laser cutters. 4. 3 of them are in the production area, and they're primarily used for cutting acrylics. We have all kinds of laser cut accessories for the microbit and other things. And early on, the manufacturing team here had some issues with bits getting sort of dropping into the knives. I can't remember why I was bringing this up, but the point is the team here over the years have become extremely expert in cutting with acrylic, and have found how to dial in the settings just right, so the speed and the amount of power that's being output are just enough to cut through cleanly, but not so much as to leave a lot of marking on the back of the items. As one of the things I used to notice early on with some laser cut parts for the microbit kits was that as you were looking at the edges of the acrylic, you could see little dings where the beam had touched the knife bed, and reflected back up and caused a little divot. And that's still quite a common thing to find on laser cut Perspex things. And it's not the end of the world, but it's the sort of thing that if you're going for a high polished finish that you want to look out for. And the way to do that is just to do lots of experiments with your acrylic to find the ideal speed and power to cut through that.
Yes.
Last thing I want to ask you about, Emma, is thermal forming, because you've done some of that, haven't you? Some bending. Should we put those back on the screen?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Hi.
there we are.
Yes, I have. I've done a lot of thermoforming. most recently, it was a lamp.
I was going to say the Tiffany lamp, wasn't it?
No, it was timed nightlight.
Oh.
That has stacks of clear acrylic on the top of it, but it has a what's it called? Living hinge around the edge, and I heated that up.
So the living hinge is where you do several cuts. So if we wanted to bend this piece of acrylic, that's very small. If we wanted to bend this piece of acrylic, if we wanted it to bend like this, we would do a series of line cuts next to each other to the point where there's enough give in the material to bend it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it looks a little bit like there are different patterns, but the one I use the most is it looks like a brick pattern, like it's lines that sort of stack like that. It's makes it easier to bend. And but when I wasn't doing that and it was clear stuff that I was thermoforming, you gave me a bowl, didn't you?
That's right, it was
a
dog
bowl.
bowl.
Yes. I had a bowl as basically a form, and it's fairly easy to heat acrylic, especially something like 3mm.
What were you using to heat it?
It was literally just a heat gun.
Like an industrial heat gun.
Yes. Yeah. It would have been easier if I had a strip heater, but you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and a dog bowl and a heater heat gun that worked perfectly.
Well, we'll do the job.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if you were making if you were forming acrylic as part of a sign making business, or in a school or something like that. Well, in school, obviously, you can use a heat gun, but another safe way to do it is to use a strip heater, which has a long electrical element that heats evenly along a long stretch. So you would take your sheet of plastic, you'd lay it on top of this line of this heater element, and that would give you a soft part of the plastic which you could then push around the form. Yes,
yeah. And generally, if you're going to be pushing it around forms, I have a set of gloves that I use, because you want gloves anyway, because it will get proper, like, really hot. But if you use gloves with like a pattern on them, or like rubber parts, which I've made the mistake of once and never done again, you will leave little craters in the top of the acrylic.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in the top of your hand.
Oh no, it was the acrylic, because the rubber parts will heat up and sort of push patterns into the acrylic. And but it is best to wear gloves as well, especially if you're working with clear, because I have used my bare hands before on slightly less warm, you know, just towards the end of it cooling, and it leaves a frosting on the acrylic.
Where from your fingerprints and such.
Almost. I think it's probably more like your skin oils, because it ends up leaving like a just an area that isn't as clear as the rest of it. Like lots and lots of smudges.
Well, it's somewhat similar to doing the engraving. You're disrupting the surface.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's as it's hot and it's pliable, you'll be I guess you'll be damaging the surface on that.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to finish up by just talking about the thing I promised to talk about, and this is maybe not like the hottest topic to finish on, but like the differences between cast and extruded.
Yes.
So I'm not going to go into what the difference is in terms of manufacturing technique. Obviously, one is squirted out and the other one's put in a mould and made. But cast is considered to be the higher quality. We sell both casted and extruded clear acrylics here at Kitronik. Frankly, when it comes to most school type projects or maker projects, it's really not going to make any difference whatsoever, and the differences are minuscule essentially. But cast is considered to have a better optical clarity. So if you're making something you're going to look through, then cast will give you more advantages than extruded. The cast has greater thermal stability, meaning if you're in a very hot environment, it's less likely to be affected by the heat. again, for most projects, that
Yeah.
I mean, don't be using any of these things as life depending.
No,
You know,
no.
Don't use it in the cockpit of an
Yeah,
airplane.
no.
It also has a higher resistance to solvents than the
Yes.
extruded.
Yeah.
But as to what level of resistance it might have compared to the extruded, I couldn't say. It would be on the data sheet, I would think. The advantages of extruded are it is better for heat bending. So if you're going to do a project like your projects on the lamp and so on, then extruded is better for that, apparently.
Yeah.
And that pretty much concludes our first Tech Talk live stream on laserable materials.
Amazing. Just as a final aside, my experience of cast versus extruded for thermoforming is that if I use cast, it will spring back a lot more than extruded does. If you heat it back up again, when it is bent, it will return more readily to its original shape, which I believe is something to do with hydrocarbons straightening back out. But I don't know, because it's been ages since I took chemistry. So
well, maybe
Sure.
we can do a show and tell on bending in the future.
Yeah, that would be great.
And talking in the future, the plan is for us to pick off a different Kitronik material each month and talk about it in depth as we are here. But on that note, thank you very much for being a watching audience. Which smells more? We don't know which smells more. We haven't tested that.
No.
We don't know whether cast or extruded smells more. Let's say extruded does, because it's not as good. But that's just my opinion, man.
Oh, you should really put that on a forum somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, and on that note, I think we'll say thank you very much for joining.